Okay, welcome back to Sustainable Sundays. Today we have a guest from my country, that's Italy, and we are with Simone Cicero. Hi, Simone, how are you?
Hello, everybody. Great to be here.
Great, great. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. And yeah, let's start with topic of today. Topic. I will just say to you a few words, few hints for start the discussion. And actually, I will tell you sincerely that I was very, very impressed by one article that you and your colleagues have sent to us of Abzin regarding localism and the relationship with climate change. I found that very, very intriguing because I think that this approach to also make the climate change issue, adaptation issues at the local scale is very important also to apply all the big discourses that maybe sometimes we see at the conferences of parties and so on. But yeah, I'll leave you the floor to start the discussion.
Thank you. Well, I think localism is a bit like one of the facets of generally this polarization that we see in the discussion around climate change and sustainability. This polarization that exists between the kind of techno optimists and the people that are critical towards technology. And this is not a new discussion. I mean, it's to some extent related to many other threads of conversation that we have seen developing in the latest decades. It's probably started. The roots are very much into philosophy and thinkers as Heidegger, for example, right, that identified the relationship between technology and the humans as problematic very much several decades ago. But maybe if you want, we can connect it with the work of Wendell Berry in the 70s and also Ivan Illich and his ideas around conviviality. So the idea that you cannot just continue to add technological advancements and technological infrastructures. At some point, you have to stay true to some elements of belonging and culture that if you lose them, you have no possibility to really overcome. It's something that becomes to some extent it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of consuming the world, right? So this is something that dates back to these thinkers, and now there is this kind of revival of localism. It's a revival that is again having mixed roots. As for what I'm seeing, I am a practitioner of organizational design and development, business model innovation, and I always had this kind of conflicting polarization in my work as well, right? I'm, naturally I am a rationalist and techno, to some extent also techno optimist, because I've been thinking about how platforms, for example, could help us to mobilize ecosystems and solve complex problems. But on the other hand, I'm also in touch with so many people that come from these more ideas that are more inspired from, I would say, decentralization and autonomy, and to some extent also tradition, right? This is something that is coming up from these conversations on social media and so on. So now there is this kind of big issues that we are seeing with the complicated machine, that the technosphere that we created in this industrial age, and now we are seeing this breaking down in so many ways. for example, with the supply chains that are now very much in trouble, with the energy crisis that we are living, with the pandemic. There is also an expression of hyper-connectivity in the world. You know, pandemics always existed, but now, you know, pandemic that starts in Wuhan in just 1 week. Maybe it didn't really start in Wuhan. We never know. We really don't know. It's everywhere, not just 1 week, because we have such an interconnected society. So localism, I think, is we have to look into localism as a nuance of a broader discussion. That is a discussion of confronting with complexity without necessarily just one approach, that is the techno-optimist, relativist, rationalist approach, but it may be an approach that requires some type of epistemic humbleness and some kind of reduction, like limits. That's the idea that I think it's embedded in this idea of localism.
Thank you very much for also this wide overview on the origin. And
yeah, because
I
mean, we don't want to stay attached to just the idea of localism. We want to see that as in a broader, I think, in a broader sense, right? What does it communicate? What is the signal behind localism? And it's a signal of, I would say, a new epistemic more than just a matter of distance.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and also I very appreciate all the discourse of the techno-optimism. Actually, I also coming from a technical background, and also I saw that sometimes the hyper confidence on technology and technological advance are like a very problem also to address the very problem of the climate change and so on. Actually, we are seeing that, for example, on energy transition. I don't want to go on to that topic, but something similar is happening also there. Instead of maybe changing the shape of the mindset, the shape of thinking, we are trying to go more in deep, and find how to like exploit more nature rather than understand also the power of communities. I think that you also touch a very important point regarding the COVID situation. I'm very fan of community resilience and what like the pandemic has teach us regarding communities, and how, for example, the concept of reciprocity is very into the understanding of resilience, both in sanitary resilience like COVID, but also in climate resilience. And yeah, on this concept of reciprocity and also the valorization, for example, of the local relationship and local knowledge, I want to ask you some thoughts about how localism can like frame that and can also valorize that.
Well, you know, once we understand that in that is we don't want to go the way of industrialism. We have to not just criticize industrialism, but we have to build a positive thesis, right? And essentially, industrialism is the society of specialization, right? You never have community in industrialism. You are just a consumer, and that's really a mantra, you know, that we have been. If you think about how much the word consumer is infused in your thinking, you know, to how much you see yourself most of the time as a consumer, I think this tells a lot about the story of industrialism that we have been subject or maybe objects of in the last century or so, more than a century for sure, but essentially of course the 20th century was really, you know, the kind of maximum expression of industrialism, and it's continuing, right? So once we say, this is not going to work, these kind of specialized societies where we just consume, and technology, as you said, you go deeper and deeper, you consume more and more, and to find the resources, you go deeper and deeper. I have this metaphor of the wells, like to find the water, you have to go deeper and deeper because water is finishing. But our answer is not to say, okay, with finishing water. No, it's just to say, let's go deeper and find it deeper, right? So if we don't go that direction, what do we build then? So what is the alternative thesis that it cannot be just a thesis of criticism of industrialism. If we don't want to be naive, it needs to be a thesis of development. And so I think that's why I like very much, and I'm working these very days around the thesis of conviviality that I mutuate from, I'm taking from Ivan Illich's work. Ivan Illich is a thinker from the 70s. He was a priest and a philosopher, and it's a very conflicted, writer and thinker, because people are very critical of his work, and some others are very much enthusiastic about this. But I think this idea of conviviality that Illich has been promoting, that is rooted on the idea that, of course, we can use technology, but we have to be aware of when technology essentially becomes too much, so that our joyful relationship between each other is put into trouble. So, for example, when we look at our phones like this all day, and we don't speak with the others, this is clearly one way that technology is jeopardizing our humanity. And that's where community comes up. Basically, I believe that the alternative economy and society we have to build, the organizations we have to build, they can be scalable, they can be impactful, they can be powerful, but they need to be built around these principles of autonomy, being producers and non-consumers, being joyful in relationship with each other, and so on. So the trait of community, it's of course central to this new organizational model, new economic model we have to build, and it's very difficult because essentially we have not been taught or used to relate with each other. Basically the last few decades and the centuries, well, not centuries, but several decades, have been about separation. So we have been told, you have your job, you have your family, you have your home, you have your trajectory, and don't care about the others. Basically, the others they do not exist. You just sit there, go to school, get your degree, get your job, consume your job, essentially, get your democracy provided to you, administered to you, get your technology administered to you, get everything administered, you just consume it, and you stay in your bubble and don't care about the others, right? So we are at a level that, for example, most of the people we know don't even live near to their families. That kind of relationships are being fragmented and destroyed by development and progress. So to build, I think, a new alternative, we have to go back there, and we have to rediscover things such as the humanity, basically, empathy, taking decisions together, being vulnerable to the others, our emotions, all these kind of literacy in relationships, and start again to give value to the time we spend together, to the experiences that we have as a community in interaction in our towns, in our neighborhoods, in our families, even, I must say, with ourselves. So be able to really feel what we are, who we are, and discover again our emotions. This may be the basis of how we build an alternative society. So it cannot be that we build a sustainable society just by using lithium instead of I don't know, fossil fuels. That wouldn't change anything of what we build. We need to have a different thesis, and this needs to be a constructive thesis. It needs to be a positive thesis, an exciting thesis. It needs to be something we are enthusiastic about, and I think we have to learn how to be enthusiastic about building in community, building in relationships, and not in separation.
Thank you, thank you. I totally agree with your points. But I have a question that sometimes also I made to myself when I was thinking about maybe reshaping the communities and trying to understand also sustainable models. Also, this approach of localism is very interesting, and of course, it let us discover the relationship also properly at the local level. But maybe one criticism that can be done to localism is too close too much to the local. No, indeed, we are in a global world. We passed like decades talking about globalization and globalization of markets, rights, and so on. So how the localism can stand into this framework and how to avoid maybe the close to the local?
Well, that's a very important question, and I spoke about this very much several times, especially with some of my friends, like for example, Indy Johar, and for example, Indy makes this point that we have to build some kind of diagonal systems, right, that go from the local to the global, right? So we cannot just be confined in the local. The interesting point here is essentially, as we, for example, if you think about CO2, right, CO2 pollution, that's definitely a global problem. So if you are in a, you can build a very nice local system, but then if this local system burns tons of fossil fuels, then the problems are global, right? Your fossil fuels just go into the atmospheres, and go everywhere. So we're clearly connected. And there has been a lot of research and talking about a topic called Cosmolocalism that you're probably familiar with. So this idea that bits can be global while atoms should be local, right? So this is the idea. And as I said before, even in the conviviality framing, it's not that technology, or for example, something like trade, should be demonized. But at the same time, as I said before, if the result of using these things, it's a destructive result, so you end up with a society that is irrespectful of the local environment, is irrespectful of the human being itself, then nothing changes. So essentially what I'm saying here is there is no ultimate limit you cannot cross. There is no way, no moment where we sit and say, this is how much global you can go or how much local you should be. So there's no limit. Okay, it's always something that we have to perceive and we have to consider, as an option, as an alternative, as a possibility. But at the same time, if we just say, okay, no, the world is global, we cannot measure ourselves with building local systems, building systems where we have skin in the game, building systems where everything is based on our relationships. If we do not accept this perspective of localizing into ourselves first, and then localizing into our families, into our communities, into our towns, if we do not accept this because we say, the world is global, it doesn't make sense to be local. No, it makes a lot of sense. It makes sense because recasting your life into a local system, which can be, I mean, again, there's no limit in what I'm considering as locals. For example, it can be that I'm collaborating with someone in, I don't know, in another region that is near to my bioregion, for example. But if we do not accept this challenge of saying we hate the world as it is today, because that's it, the world is not working, but we do not accept that we have to build, we have to build something in relationship with others, having skin in the game, being embedded in the landscape, which is a terrific perspective. Nobody's ready for this because we have not been taught at school about perceiving ourselves, about perceiving our neighbors, about perceiving our environment. So it's a massive challenge for all of us. But if we do not accept and engage with this in a perspective of really changing what we do and what we consider salient and what we prize and what we love and what we engage with, there's no way we can build an alternative. So the point is, the alternative is not going to come top down. It's just going to come from us. So it's our problem. It's the problem of each of us to build the economy and build the alternative, trying to make the best of globalism and localism. But you have to be there firsthand. It needs to be you. Looking at this video, it needs to be you, not me. It's you, me, Domenico, and everybody else. It's not the government. It's not the big industries. They're going to play their role, but the alternative is going to be built by us. So that's why localism and community are important.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate also the point when you say that we are not being told to address this time and to address also this situation. Yeah. And actually, our learning system in general was prepared more maybe to be like an element of the productive chain. Once I heard that from another thinker that it's Mario Agostinelli that from the Laudato Si Association that is very addressing this comparison between productivism and generativism and sustainability. Actually was saying that our learning system is done to put ourselves in one sector, put ourselves there to produce on something. Course. Yeah. Okay, let's end up with the very last question. In your experience, did you face some example in which maybe localism have been quite applied in community and so on, and you don't know, find this case very interesting also to spoke about localism, so like case studies example?
Yeah. I will talk about two examples. One is very much easy to find for the listeners, and it's a project from London called Participatory City. You may be familiar with that project, directed by Tessie Britton, and it's a project where essentially they're trying to build a productive economy in two boroughs of London, around shared infrastructure where people build, really, grow food, build pottery, build textiles, create textiles. So what we can call an economy of fundamentals. So essentially trying to rebuild relational systems and entrepreneurial as well systems around these basics of the economy in a city. So I think it's very interesting because it's happening in London. That is like the flagship example of globalism, essentially, right? So it's a very interesting project, and something that people can engage with. There are some excellent videos, posts, and information that you can find very easily. Another example is a project that is very dear to my heart, and then I'm trying to work in terms of developing an organizational model that can integrate and connect this project with other similar projects. It's a project from Salerno. It's a project called Monte Frumentario and Terra di Resilienza. It's a cooperative that essentially grows food. They're very much basic staples like grains, essentially wheat and that kind of stuff, and it's doing so by creating kind of library of seeds that they are caring for and conserving and enriching within the years, and but not only with the seeds, but also creating the skills, creating the relationships, and nurturing with, for example, a little festival that they run every year called Camp di Grano, which is essentially in Italian to say, a kind of let's say a festival of the grain, of the wheat, and they do so by creating a relational economics. So essentially, it's non-profit cooperative, putting together all these small companies and farmers, connecting them with their landscape, with their towns and communities, creating relationships, and doing so, essentially, they do not create customers. They are not creating consumers. They are creating, having economic relationships that go beyond the transaction. Okay, so if you do not just stop at the transaction, you can appreciate all the profound context that there is in a piece of wheat, in a grain of wheat, and that makes a lot of difference, right? It's a completely different way to perceive food, to perceive agriculture, and maybe, as Wendell Berry used to say, it's a way to see that agriculture is culture. And I think that reconnects very nicely with this idea of localism, that at the end of the day is land. And I think we have to understand that land is culture, and we have to reconnect with the land and with our bioregions to really be 100% humans. That's the point that maybe we can finish on.
Thank you very much, Simone. Very inspiring. I really appreciate this talk. Also, it's helped us to reshape and also to find some new models to address this time of crisis that actually, at least to my opinion, they are trying to let us learn something. So thank again to Simone Cicero of Boundaryless. If you agree, Simone, we can put also the link to your organization.
Of course. So we are bringing forward the work on creating models and frameworks for people to engage with these problems and opportunities. Happy to having contributed. And again, I want to just clarify. I'm not sitting here and telling you what to do. I am trying to do so. I know that it's hard, but yeah, we have to measure ourselves with this challenge of building the alternative. So I hope that the listeners will enjoy that and try.
Thank you. And remember to subscribe the channel, and also a special invitation. I also invite, as we are like a platform for sharing information, also to follow another podcast that our colleagues of Boundaries are making, that is Samurai. Maybe if you can say a few words about that.
It's in Italian. Actually, I run two podcasts if you're interested. One is called Boundaryless Conversations Podcast. You can check it out. It's in English, so it's probably much more easy for your listeners to listen to. And it's about the future of organizing, so very much the topics we discussed. And another one is called Samurai, and it's in Italian, by the way. And again, there's so many overlaps, but it's really about how do we change our posture towards the future, and deciding where and on what we want to invest our money, time, energy in a world where the landscape has shifted, and we have to recognize it and recast our priorities.
Thank you very much again to Simone. Thank you to you all that have listened. Subscribe the channels, Hubs in Italia and B1, that are like the promoter of this initiative. And see you to the next Sustainable Sunday. Bye to all.
A posto.